Good afternoon. Welcome back to Poe Discussions with Carmen and Jeannie. I am Carmen Bolden.
And I am Jeannie Smith.
And
we are
the Poe-tastic 2.
All right, come on, get with the program.
No, we did well on that one. That was much better than normal.
Yeah, it is.
So I say afternoon because we're recording a little bit earlier sometimes than we do. We never know when we're recording. Sometimes it's morning, evening. We've even done late at night too. But we have a special guest this afternoon, and her name is Jeanette Bonner. And so, Jeanette, please take it away and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi. Well, Carmen, Jeannie, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. Yeah. I'm thrilled to be here to nerd out a little bit and talk more Poe. I am a actor producer living in New York City, and we connected at the Poe Festival in Baltimore this past October.
Yes.
And I think you had a table, you had a booth, right? And
yes, we did. We had a vendor booth. Yes.
And I have a podcast as well, completely unrelated to Poe. It's called #Single. It is a feminist take on reclaiming being single as a positive, or at least not a negative state, and definitely not something that needs to be fixed or solved. So I think we just got off on chatting about podcasts and things Poe, and here we are. But that's my shtick. I have a short film called Lovesick, which is based on Poe's short story, The Facts of the Case of M. Valdemar, and it's currently on the festival circuit. Our next screening will be at Roosevelt Island Film Festival, June 22nd.
Oh, awesome. Well, and I've watched the trailer. I think, Jeannie, you got a chance to watch the trailer, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah. It looks really cool.
Thank you. Really cool. It's a little weird. And it's okay. Like I'm trying to embrace the fact that it's a little difficult and people don't really get it. We're calling it a short experimental noir take on a Poe story, which is a lot. When you're like experimental and noir and Poe, well, we were, to be perfectly frank, we were just like a little bored. And we're like, how can we make this really impossible for us? And what seemed really cool and unique to us, I think, has been a little maybe obtuse to other people. It doesn't really particularly fit in a box. Like, it's not 100% a Poe story because we've gender swapped it and set it in 1949. And it's not 100% a noir because we sort of took it out of time and place and put it in sort of like a Twilight Zone setting. So it's been a little bit of a hard sell, which hurt my feelings a little bit at the beginning. And now I'm just going to lean into it and be like, I have a weird film that not everybody gets. And not everybody likes, and that's okay.
Well, and I guess one question I would have, are the viewers who are watching it, have they read the actual Poe story before they see it? That's a huge question.
Yes, I think that is also a little bit of a handicap for us because, and I will speak freely because I didn't know this story. It's one of his more like obtuse, obscure stories, which when I read it was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited about it. But if you're more familiar with the like canon of Poe, which is, the popular ones, I think like Poe nerds will know this story immediately.
Yeah, they will.
But is this, I keep having to explain what the story is. And then I'm like, I'm a layer on top of the fact that I gender swapped it and I turned it into noir and why. And so I think without context, it's hard to take some, like if you had taken a Christmas Carol by Dickens and turn it into a noir set in 1949, people might get it. But because people might not have a base of reference for the original story, maybe I made it really difficult on my audience.
Well, but I will say that you could, I think what you've done with it, I think is really cool because a lot of people do many adaptations of Poe's work and do
Yes.
change up some things, and it works. And again, it is one of Poe's stories that's not as known as like Telltale Heart, Cask of Amontillado and such, but it's one that should be more known because it just the whole mesmerism aspect of it. We did a whole episode on mesmerism this year in
Nice.
one of our degree episodes, and it's fascinating, and more people should read this one.
Yeah. And to your point, not just that, it contextualizes Poe's stories so much.
Yes.
Like we forget the fanaticism around mesmerism. I even want to say mesmerism because it doesn't even really relate to modern hypnotism.
Right.
It's sort of this like seance-y world coming into the occult, and how much that influenced, you have to know the social context of what's happening contemporaneously with Poe when he's writing. Exactly. So like talking about and mesmerism helps give context to these stories that we now kind of, I think, put in a box we call Poe kind of horror or thriller. But to me, that's it's putting a label on something that wasn't necessarily an exact fit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
and at the same time, Poe is pigeonholed. I'm going to use that word.
Yeah.
Because now I don't get upset about it, them using it in the schools and introducing it to students at a certain age and all that kind of thing, because, literature is close to my heart. But at the same time, it's like you're introducing this poet, this storyteller, this type of phenomena, if you want to say, about a guy over 200 years ago. And all of a sudden, these kids, they're only reading certain things. And then later on, they might continue it or they might just totally forget it.
Yes.
So it's like with our podcast when we first started, is like we had the diehard Poe fans, the people who have read and know Poe.
Yeah.
But then we were very rarely getting anyone interested unless it was something contemporary, like when we talked about Batman, or we talked about Star Trek, or we brought in those types of things. And I think with your story, that was part of the hurtfulness to it, was that the people that were Poe people weren't going to try to give it a chance because they were trying to compare it to Poe's story verbatim.
Interesting. Yeah.
That's a really good point, Jeannie.
Yeah, and you can't do that because I've been called a literature snob by so many of my friends over the years, especially when they try to take those books and they turn them into movies. Now there are some that I'm like wholeheartedly, this is cool, but it's like you ruined the book for me when you ruined the movie because you didn't stick to what made for me the book.
The beauty
so
and the lyricism in it. Yeah, I 100% agree. Yeah.
And so what I think with your movie is when you have to explain something so much, it's like you're taking away the love and the nuance and the want of enjoyment for that. And it's like, don't try to pinpoint it as just a Poe story.
Yeah.
Poe was the type of person. This is one of the reasons why I think Carmen and I are having so much fun with our podcast, because he is so much more, even today. The man's been dead for years and years and years, but what he had done and what he has influenced even in today is still alive and well.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to concentrate on.
Yeah.
And anything that gets inspired by Poe, whether it be a parody, whether it be just an influential thought of, oh, this would be cool. And this like embraces my intellectual creativity, that should be taken into account. You shouldn't automatically say, oh, you're doing Poe's story in a
Yes.
weird,
Yeah.
something, and everybody's going to automatically,
Yeah. Yes.
are going to automatically see something wrong with it. And I think that's the problem. Don't go in with a negative idea. Go in with an open mind.
Absolutely. And when different Poe types of performances or things are done, Jeannie and I always go into it with an open mind, saying, you know what, we're not going to like prejudge something before we see it. Let's, give everything an opportunity, because so many, like, the adaptations can go so many different ways and just really enhance the story or give new types of perspective. And it's like, again, kind of what Jeannie was saying, our whole goal for like what we do is making those connections that further connect even, down the road.
Yeah.
And with different things. And so, and like when you told me that your film was a noir, I was like, oh, that's one of my favorite genres. And so, yeah, I love it.
Thank you. I think that's like such a beautiful sentiment. I mean, like, I think I'm an actor, so allow me to nerd out a little bit for a moment. But like, I really do believe that artistry comes from like your interpretation or your vision of what you see something as. So there's, as you said, there's tons of literal representations of his works, but isn't it more interesting where you can be like, how do we make this, or the byline or the thesis or the core of what this film or this story was intended to be, and how can we insert that, which is why we say like inspired by. I'm kicking myself why I didn't send you the full film before we have this podcast. I just sent you the trailer.
Okay. Yeah,
so mean. I will, I promise, but at the beginning it does say inspired by, and not like, or I think it's based on, but it's not an adaptation. Absolutely, it's our artistic interpretation of what that was. And it really does have to be an artistic interpretation, because this story of his is so non-adaptable to film. The fact that it's written in prose, it's written in past tense, it's written with one character's point of view, almost as if it's like a medical essay. Like, it's really quite difficult, but also quite freeing, in that you're like, well, we have so little, we could kind of do. I think that's why my writer Sib wanted this story in particular, because the story is cool, right? Like, if you were just to sum it up in 15 words, but when you realize that it's only like 3 paragraphs, when you look how short it is. Like, I read it and was like, wait, what? This is it. So you realize that, like, oh, actually it's just the base layer. Like, here's the gift, and now it's your turn to create something new and cool with this.
Yeah, absolutely. And and thinking about how long the story it was, and when it came out, people, especially that were into mesmerism, thought it was real, that Poe was actually documenting a real case of this actually happening.
Yeah.
So it was, hoax worthy. And so, thinking about that, and a lot of his narrators are that first person perspective. It's an unreliable narrator. And so it's like, are they really telling the truth?
And what a juicy gift for a filmmaker to be like, well, I mean, let me take this and like, well, what if? I mean, we were honestly really just selfish in gender swapping it, because the doctor and the patient were both male. And as a producer, I say that what I want to do is I want to put the work out into the world that I want to see. And I do want to make more female forward stories. So how dare I come in and make this film? But I was like, and then my director was like, well, why does it doesn't have to be the literal. Why can't we gender swap it?
Yeah.
And what interesting questions come up when we gender swap it? And that actually, we almost did like a year of development, because there were a lot of implications when we changed the gender. We were like, let's talk about the doctor. Would there be a female doctor at this time? no. Okay, so we got to put it a little in the future. Okay, so what would be the time of it? And that's how we ended up in noir, because we're like, okay, we're looking at
Interesting.
1940s. And even then, she might be the only doctor in her graduating class.
Yes,
And
yes.
she's not given a position of authority and she's not given a place of trust. So,
Mhm.
how does that then change the unreliable narrator?
That's
You
very
know,
true.
yeah.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of actually some juicy subtext to it that I think, as you said rightfully earlier, if you don't know the story and you're not super into Poe, it's maybe a disservice to us that
Yeah,
we're like, look at this cool thing we did, this short story, and people are like, I don't understand what's happening.
yeah. Well, and to yeah, because I'm glad you explained like how you like developed, slowly how you figured out to put it into that noir genre, because that was one of my questions. Because I was like, you could put it in so many different time periods. You could even modernize it. You could have done it, in the, you know, 1920s. I mean, you could have done anything, and it's like, I just think that's really cool.
Thanks. I think, and then also that was a little selfish too, because my
Mhm.
DP had never done noir and he wanted to do noir.
Okay.
So it was a
Yeah.
lot of, it was like, but again, we had a playground and we were like, if we
Yeah.
get to make the choices and
Why
I'm paying
not?
for it, like, yeah, I know, like no
Yeah.
one's financing this but us.
Mhm.
Let's make the film that we want to do.
Yeah.
Let's have fun with this. And I loved making it. I still love it. And it disappoints me that people aren't really like it's not landing quite the right way. It's not
Okay.
finding, or maybe I'm just not finding the right audience. Like I don't know where they are.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
working through it. But we
Okay.
did premiere at the Paris Cinema Film Festival, which is in the
Okay.
UK. So I felt like I was like, okay, we're on the right track, going strong.
That's good. That's
And then we
good.
had this total left turn to like Roosevelt Island Film Festival in New York City. but who cares? You know, like maybe and I it's just a small indie festival, so it's not necessarily like
Yeah.
a genre festival, shall I say?
Okay.
But that maybe, yeah, maybe I've been chasing the wrong crowd. Maybe I've been thinking that like sci-fi fantasy audiences will want to see this, and it's not
I think
fantasy
that's
enough, you know?
yeah, and I think that's very possible. I was trying to think, definitely a Poe type festival, where you could have it shown would definitely, people would want to see it
Yeah.
that,
We
that are,
submitted to the Richmond International Film Festival because we're like, okay, well, hopefully they'll, if anyone, they'll
oh
get
yeah.
it.
Hmm.
Waiting
Okay.
to hear back from that one.
Oh,
So,
good. Okay,
we'll
good.
see. Yeah. But,
Okay.
at the end of the day, I've had to have many conversations with myself about what why do we do this in the first place and what is
Yeah.
art, right? Like
Hmm.
yeah, it would be superb to have my love for the film mirrored back,
Yeah.
but at the same time, uh I made something I'm really proud of that I'm happy with. And what does Elizabeth Gilbert say? Like, once you put it out into the world, you're not in charge of how it's received.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
And I was
And
gonna say, I always told, like when I was a school administrator, I would always tell my kids that, well, the person that did something to somebody else, well, I didn't hit them that hard. And it's like, you're not the judge of how hard you hit. It's
Mm-mm.
the receiver and how they feel. And they're like, okay, you're right.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that makes
but
sense.
the one good thing that, especially when you use any type of influence from Poe, is that he may not have been a pioneer and wanted to be a pioneer in certain things, but his writing and certain of his stories are so open-ended.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's again like what a gift for any artist or for any filmmaker.
Hmm.
Like it's open to interpretation. Again, why I'm kicking myself. I mean, you know how the story ends, but I'm kicking
Yeah.
myself for not sending you the film because we had to deal with how does the body disappear on
Right.
the table.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Because in the story the body vaporizes or it
Right.
turns to dust really.
Yeah.
And we are like, well, we just don't have that kind of budget, so how can we
Right.
do this in like a cool way that isn't just like, cut away to the doctor's reaction, cut back,
Mhm.
and we kind of find a happy medium. I'll definitely send you the film after we wrap this conversation.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear your thoughts. But it's been interesting and fun for those I've shared it to be like, well, they're like, some people have literally asked me what happened. And I'm like, what?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
what do you think happened? Like, I'm not actually quite
Yeah.
sure myself, but we didn't want to do a film that answered everything, but there's a lot of open-ended questions in the film.
Well, and that's how Poe wrote. He
Yeah.
wanted the audience to interpret those things.
Yeah.
And so, oh my goodness.
And that's one of the things that makes me so irritated, to where I'm like, why would I want to go to watch a movie if all they're going to do is tell me every single thing, when it happens, how it happens, who did it, what happened.
Yeah.
And I'm not involved in any way.
Right.
So that's my point of being here.
Right.
So, and then I think part of the problem with some of your audience members is, and being a retired educator, some people have just lost their imagination.
Yes.
They've lost.
We run into that a lot. Yeah.
100%. I agree with that.
The want to, the curiosity. It's like, oh,
yeah,
what happened? How did it happen? Used to, it would be, you could ask a kid and tell them this wonderful thing about, lightning striking or anything like that. And they'd be like, oh, how does that happen? What happens to it? Now it's like, I can look it up on the internet.
Yeah.
I have noticed, I daylight as a tour guide. So I'm doing storytelling in New York City is like the way I like to say it.
That's so fun.
And I do a lot of educational student tours, and I've been doing this since 2009. So I've definitely seen my educational student tours mostly revolve around 8th grade class trips. It's a lot of people coming at the end of their school year, like in their transition phase. And I have 100% seen a change in difference. I'm sure you have as well.
Yeah.
And in a marked difference in depleted curiosity.
Yeah.
And imagination also as well. 100%.
100%.
Go ahead, Jeannie.
Accepting everything that you're told as 100% truth. That always got me in the classroom, because I was teaching 8th grade history and 7th grade science. So I was looking at it from both words. But at the same time, it's like, I'm like, who told you it wasn't okay to think for yourself?
Yeah.
Who told you that it wasn't okay for you to look up things and ask questions and want to know things and make up your own mind? And decide. It doesn't matter what your decision comes to, whether it agrees with the person next to you or not. But if you don't want to ask questions and you don't want to find out your own truth, then what's the point? Why would you go around and have everybody telling you exactly what you should be doing? Like, how to walk, how to talk. I'm like, you're your own individual person. Be that person.
Yeah.
It's okay to ask a question. And I said, and let me just tell you something. Don't ever take what everybody says as 100% grain of truth. If you can't ask a question and look at information yourself and then weigh all the decisions and come to your own answer, then you're doing a disservice to yourself. And like with Poe's stories and everything else, and I think that's one of the reasons why he would leave them so open-ended, whether it be at the beginning or at the end, and sometimes right in the middle. He would not give you 100% of everything that he wanted you to know.
Yeah.
He gave you what he wanted to say, and then he was like, okay, you make the decision on your own. Do you agree with Fortunato? Do you agree with Montessori? Are you okay with somebody getting walled up in a, which one do you feel more sorry for? The one that did the walling up or the one that got walled up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
well, and two, Poe loved cryptograms, solving them, writing them, putting them in the paper for people to solve. And it's like almost, it's not educating, but it's really just, providing people with, thinking. It's like, be a critical thinker yourself. And
it's a playground.
Yes.
Poe created a playground for all different ages, all different ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about this in our Poe Unplugged, that the difference between reading one of his stories when you're a teenager versus reading it when you're in your late 20s versus reading it when you're in your 40s.
Yeah.
Every single time you read it, it can mean something different based on what's going on in your own life.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's what, to me, makes Poe perfect.
Yes.
What a beautiful quote. I literally wrote that down.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'm like, I'm going to steal that for my talk back at my film festival.
There you go. There you go.
No, but it's such a great concept. Like, and you verbalized it just like perfectly. It's just, it was a really nice sentiment.
Yes.
Well, thank you. I appreciate someone who, like you said, you took it to a noir level. You took it to a different time. You created something from your own mind with Poe being an influence, but you didn't want to just recreate something just to recreate it.
Right.
I don't even know how you would recreate that story anyway. It's so weird.
Yeah. And we've talked about this. We have some good friends. It's Poe Movies. I don't know if you've ever.
I chatted with them at the festival.
Yeah. Okay. They're great. And, one of the things that Thad and Season have said, and we agree with it, Poe really, put the short story out and made it what it is today. And, his philosophy was, you should be able to sit down and read something within like 30 minutes to an hour. And his stories, you can do that with, sometimes some of them even shorter than that. And it's like most of his stories cannot be adapted to a full-length movie without adding in all of this extra content.
100%. Yeah.
And Jeannie and I we have a Patreon, and we do extra episodes for that. And one of the things that we just did was on Roger Corman. And what we found in our research is Poe's story was the third act in his Poe films, and they would fill in the gaps for, the first two scenes, kind of the first two acts. And so that's why they weren't all strictly Poe, like, perfectly Poe, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you had to add some adaptation because there's not enough to make that like an hour and a half, 2-hour movie from one of his short stories.
Well, even like the Fall of the House of Usher, right?
Yeah.
Like there was, I felt like they wanted to adapt Poe, and they were like, wow, like we actually have to take all of them and put them into the series because there's not enough storylines to make one single show. But in doing that actually, going back to our point, gave them a lot more avenues to pursue and a lot more creativity because they were like, we have to invent a new universe where all of these things exist at the same time.
Yeah.
So I think in making a feature film or making a series, in making my weird experimental noir, like again, Poe is really intentionally adaptable, if you will, because it's it's I don't want to say it's an outline because that sounds belittling or diminishing. But it really is a beautiful starting point or a baseline for someone to say like, cool idea. What if also, Yeah.
And for me, Poe is like, he is like the middle of the rainbow. He's not the beginning, he's not the end, but he's giving you something beautiful for you to follow. And if you reach the pot of gold, it's great. But if you start back at the beginning, you're going to reach that pot of gold one way or the other. And he's just giving you the option.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it had to do with the historical aspects of Poe's time period, because we've discussed this before, that the literacy during that time, good Lord, I'm like a tongue twister there for something. Like, wow, the literacy of that time was low.
Yes.
The people that he was writing for were his peers because they were educated. They were men mostly. but it seemed that he wanted to embrace and give an option to those who didn't have the education or didn't have the reading level to understand everything that he needed to say.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes his poems were just written to be, listened to or just be read at a simple version so everybody could enjoy it. But he also imparted into his stories those little digs, like to the transcendentalists, to the, the other people that he wasn't, too happy with. So he had such a plethora of stuff that he would put in what he had to say that it was made for everybody. You could get it at such the base level, but you could understand up to his, snobbery, I'm going to say, level. Getting back at those people that were supposed to be his peers, but at the same time he could stand because that wasn't, that was his foster father's people, not his.
Yeah. That's true. And I was going to say, Jeannie, I'm hearing you almost about to start into your alliteration phase of the Poe, perfect Poe, put, all these, she does that a lot. She'll come out with like P word, and just, it flows, but it's just funny.
It's the spirit of Poe coming through the ether into you.
I actually used to do it in the classroom. I would start rhyming without any
I do that
anything.
as well.
I would start rhyming, or I would go with alliterations, and or I would stick on puns. There would be days I'd just be punning everything, and my kids would be like, "Miss Smith, would you please stop?"
Yeah,
I'm like, I'm not doing it on purpose. I can't help it.
Yeah, I guess it's just a teacher thing. It just comes out.
Yeah, where you have to find a way to amuse yourself, honestly. Like,
exactly.
on day, whatever, 159, you're like, today we're rhyming, guys.
Exactly. So, Jeanette, have you always liked Poe, or did you read it in high school? Like, we always want to kind of know with our guests, how did you come into Poe and that kind of thing?
It did start with my writer, with Sib.
Okay.
So, and I'm so happy too, because I really fell into it. It wasn't like I started at the top and had this intentionality behind it, but I approached Sib, and it's a funny story. He actually he's researching for a book, and because I'm a tour guide, he said, will you give me a mini tour of Nathan Hale and the historical spots in New York City so I can sort of see where things were in relation to each other? And I'm like, yeah, I love that stuff. And then we went out to get some lunch, and we were just talking about things. And he's like, what's your latest project? And I said, I don't have anything right now. What you got for me? I was like, you want to write something for me? And he said, I have this script that's been sitting around for maybe 5 years. I never did anything with it. You want to take a look at it? And I was like, anytime a writer's like, I have the script that I haven't produced, I'm like, absolutely. Yeah. And it was an adaptation of this story.
Okay.
So regretfully, I've never actually gotten super into like what led Sib to this story specifically, as opposed to adapting other Poe stories. But all he did say is that when I read this, it made sense to me to interpret it in a different time period. Different time period.
Yeah.
So that's when we started thinking like, oh, well, yummy, because I already would love to, if I'm going to be in it, I don't want to, you can give a classic kind of noir setup where you have the doctor patient. That's what we were thinking. And then I would be the femme fatale with the male doctor.
Yeah.
But it was, our director, Lindsay Uten, came in and was like, the doctor should be female. And I was like, yes, you're right. The doctor should be female. But, so it started as just sort of like this very collaborative effort of, I read this story and I was just sort of tinkering around with it and playing with it. But I'm like, let's see what it could be. And I brought my stuff and Lindsay brought her stuff. Anyway, to answer your actual question, because I'm rambling.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine.
My reference point to Poe, I think I read him in high school, but I couldn't tell you
Okay.
which story it was.
Okay.
I mean, and I mean, aside from like the Raven, obviously, but
Yeah.
I feel like there were other stories that just I don't have titles to them. I have this is gonna sound really strange, but maybe not to you both. I have like images in my head
Okay. Yeah.
of like Poe stories that I can't it kind of like in that swirl of stories that you had to read in AP English in high school. And you're sort of like, I remember them, but I couldn't retroactively tell you what they were.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like it's not like I was unfamiliar with Poe, but this allowed me to approach it with a keener, more adult eye and a greater appreciation for the artistry behind it,
Okay.
because I've developed my point of view as an artist and a storyteller. So I'm almost glad that it's sort of come later on in my life. I didn't have the mantle of like, oh, I read this old dude in high school, and these are what's the point of these stories? Yeah, and I also really loved going to the festival in October because
Yeah.
I felt like other people introduced me to their point of view around Poe, and that kind of opened up like the little narrow crack, or like a wedge came into it. It was like,
yeah.
So I feel like the more I'm exposed to it, and the more I learn, and the more I read, the more I want to. Yeah, that's a long-winded answer to.
Yeah.
I
No,
had
but
a limited experience, and it is continuing to grow.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting. It's very unique perspective on kind of coming in and finding Poe. And so, because, many times, Poe is first read in like 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and then some in high school. And then we've met some people that, especially if you are, if you're in the UK, they didn't really to study Poe at all, but
I can't. Yeah, that makes sense.
He's not a, European author. He's an American author. And so
and one that wasn't like greatly respected during his time in other countries,
Yeah. Yeah. So it's really fascinating kind of hearing like how people do find Poe,
him.
what they do with him and everything else. Yeah.
I'm fascinated by it too. And I was really impressed by the amount of young teenagers, but also specifically young women that were at the festival that were like really into Poe. And I found that really fascinating because it wasn't expected. Mainly because I'm like, oh no, I'm a terrible old lady. No teenagers read, right? But it's true, they don't. And so to find teenagers that are interested in this very dense vocabulary, it's almost inaccessible for I think for young people who are used to maybe like YA vampire novels. It's very intense and very, if you're not, it's just a large gate to climb, to mix metaphors.
That makes sense.
I think it's cool to like, I was so impressed by I was like that a lot of people found their way in at different times of ages and different avenues and different mediums. Like that was so inspiring to me.
That's really cool. Jeannie, did you have a question or thought?
Nope, I'm good.
You're good right now.
I'm good at the moment. Though, give me time because
I know.
What Jeanette is saying is actually a lot of the stuff. When I think about when I was a teenager, that it was the goth part of it, the horror that would just enthuse me to where it was like that dark, that just demanding of the nighttime. And I'm a fan of vampires, but I'm a fan of Anne Rice vampires, of Bram Stoker vampires,
of
Vlad the Impaler, the historical vampires.
I'm the same way.
And they gather my interest a lot, and it's like sometimes with the contemporary YA is they're trying to recreate something that's already been done as a classic, and they're doing it horribly. I guess that's what gets me the most. It's like what are you trying to say? Because you're definitely not interpreting anything about what the original was trying to say. For instance, I mean, Brave New World. It was a basic philosophical debate in a story about a utopian society and about genetic modifications. And this was written way back in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
So, and then all of a sudden you've got the more apocalyptic type versions, but then you're like, you're missing the whole point of the story. It's a human interest or a human debate, a
Right.
where do you draw the line kind of thing. You're missing the social aspect of why it was written, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And
again,
I
going
know
back to, sorry to interrupt you, Jeannie, like just to say, like, again, we were talking about the context of understanding when something was written, like really understanding the point of it. You have to understand the time that it was written and what was happening.
Exactly.
I mean, entertainment purposes, I do understand. Don't get me wrong. I like the occasional, escapism type action. And, you can't go wrong when you have a really cute guy on the screen and you're I'm not watching it.
I didn't know we were going to go there. Okay.
Absolutely not, and I don't think even if they put Edgar Allan Poe in a cape and put him on screen, that would be as happy as certain people, because it'd be like, no, he would not be the picture of a superhero to me. But but at the same
He's
time,
anti-hero.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh.
It just
Poe Man.
Poe Man, yeah. But
oh my goodness.
Just the intellectual parts of it and the societal makeup of some of the stories that Poe would have and can be interpreted and reintroduced in a contemporary aspect is what I like the most about it.
Yeah.
Whether it can be, it can be for any gender, it can be for no gender, it can be an AI, it can be anything, because Poe is all about the feeling of it.
Yeah.
So that's to me, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Poe is all about the feeling of it, not the representation of the labeling of it, just the feeling.
Yeah. The emotion you draw out of it. Yeah.
Yes. So.
Yeah.
All right, Carmen, back to you.
Okay. Well, one thing I was going to ask too, Jeanette, was so you've done theater, like just from looking at all the things you do with your production company. So you do a little bit of everything. So do you have a favorite thing you like better than others in like acting, producing, or any of
Directing.
that?
Are you saying like favorite role or favorite like medium to
the medium to creating?
Yeah, no, I mean I think, well, let's look at the podcast, for example. Like the reason I created a podcast, well, first I just realized I had like something to say, as you both probably realized at some point. You were like, let's get this out in the world. But for me, there's something about, I always just want to be growing and I never want to stagnate. And so once you kind of do one thing for even this podcast, like I've done it for 5 years and I'm starting to question where's it going and how can it grow? And if it doesn't grow, to what end? Right. And so for me, it's always about like finding a new challenge and expanding my skills that way and challenging myself to grow in that way. So, at this point I've produced about 6 or 7 short films of different genres. So a mix of like comedy, drama, LGBTQ. And I'm like, I can do another short film easily. If someone came to me tomorrow and was like, I have a short film, I'm like, I got you. Like, we're going to make this. I know how to do this. But I'm also really itching to produce my first feature film because it's the great, vast landscape that I haven't made a pilgrimage to yet. And I know part of that is because there's so much learning that has to happen for a feature. Right. It's scary to do. I'm not like afraid to do it, but at the same time, I don't see my immediate way in, if that makes sense.
That does,
a lot of the times it's really just about like, well, let's try something and figure it out.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it starts with an idea, and it starts with a team. You know, it's like when I made the Scoop, which is this hybrid food show, talk show, interview show, if you will. Like it's a very weird, again, strange, unlabelable kind of project. And the only reason I made a half interview show, half ice cream food show is because I love ice cream and I wanted to talk to people.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, but when I was pitching it to people, they were like, this is interesting. It's neither a food show nor is it a talk show. So we don't know what to do with it, you know. But I think everything, it starts with, again, going back to, like, I love this. Elizabeth Gilbert has this quote. She said, follow your love and your curiosity.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So when you sit down, you're like, you know what? We love having conversations about Poe, and we just do not run out of things to talk about. And I just feel like I have so many questions I want to answer. Why don't we start a podcast about Poe? You know, it's following your love and your curiosity, and that's where your creativity will lead you.
Yeah. So I totally agree with that, because that's kind of, I think, Jeannie, wouldn't you agree? That's kind of how we decided to do this, because, you know, putting it into how Poe has influenced so many things, we will never run out of things to talk about, people to meet, and, you know, talk about what they're doing to keep the influence of Poe alive. So,
well, most of my life is all about following my love and my curiosity.
Yes,
because
me too.
If you want to look at somebody that is doesn't have a label or any kind of, you know, you can't put a standard on me, that would be, because I've gone from so many different ends of the spectrum for what I wanted to do with my life, that becoming a teacher was like, I didn't become a teacher until my early 30s.
Yeah, me too.
Before that,
really,
I was in criminal justice. Before that, I was in hospitality industry. And, you know, it just goes and changes. And I was a professional storyteller, you know, and that was one of the things I was looking towards. And so following curiosity, that's what I aim for, because it keeps life interesting. Even when I was a teacher, and many people always just look at me kind of strange when they asked, what did I teach? And I'm like, I taught everything. And they didn't understand that I did. I would teach. I taught theater. I was the drama coach. I taught government. I taught history. I taught math. I taught science, language. I mean, all the core subjects I taught. And all it managed to do, and they would ask me, like, why would you do something like that? Because I can't stand to be bored.
Yeah.
I have to learn. I have to know. You know, and so that's like with when I went to college, they would always say, what do you want to be when you grow up? I'm like, why do I have to choose one thing?
Exactly.
I like to learn. So I'm going to learn what I want to learn when I want to learn it. So, you know, when you want to live my life, that's fine. But, you know, it's okay.
Yeah.
So curiosity, and Poe is the ultimate curiosity.
Yes.
It's like, what in the world was he thinking half the time?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And the poor man had the worst romantic life. And I think he's like the Greek tragedy from beginning to end. So yes, curiosity, meeting different people, meeting people like Jeanette and all the other, you know, guests that we've had, and the people we've met along the way, because everybody is an individual and they see things in a different way. And it's all about the dramatic irony.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you interpret it as an audience member? You know, because life is just, you are one giant audience. And you are an audience member. So how do you interpret what's going on?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so that's why I agreed with Carmen. I'm like, yeah, sure. You need help on the kabak, I'll do it.
Yes.
I don't know what I'll do, but I'll do it.
Oh yeah. And we've evolved into doing all kinds of things, and we keep evolving. And so, which I think it makes it more fun for our listeners and viewers. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So, Jeanette, do you have a favorite poem or short story by Poe
I wouldn't use the word favorite because I'm not like I don't know that I can qualify. First of all, I haven't read enough stories to be like, of all the stories, this is my favorite. But I will say there is one story that like just got under my skin and like I just feel like never really left me. And it's the Black Cat.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think a lot of people kind of feel that way about that story. And I think it's exactly what you said, Jeannie, which was like it's got gray lines, you know, and the minute you think you're feeling one way, and then you're like, oh wait, I think I feel this way. Wait, I don't want to feel that way. I want to feel this way. Oh gosh, no, wait, I wasn't ready to go in that direction either. That's what I mean. It's just sort of got under my skin. Like it's kind of an awful story, and I felt so icky afterwards, which is why I couldn't stop thinking about it. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't use the word favorite.
Yeah,
but
no, that makes
I will
sense,
say
though.
the one that like that stayed with me.
Impressed upon you.
Yeah, good word.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he wrote that when he lived in Philadelphia, and I've been to that house still exists, and it's run by the park system, and so if you get to go down to the basement, there is a section of brick, yes, that is removed. Now they have a fake black cat sitting there, but the basement is so creepy, and it's like you see where he got his inspiration. You know, the bricks probably weren't like that. You know,
I'm sure they weren't.
But it makes it so, you know, surreal for walking in and going,
yeah.
They're
like, actually, this is the door to our gift shop.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Okay,
did you want to buy a story?
Yeah.
I do have one question for you, Jeanette, and this is it was probably in your bio or whatever, but Kelly's Pool Hall.
Yeah, I get asked this a lot.
Okay. I just have to ask because there's something about it that it's like trying to trigger a memory or something about Kelly's Pool Hall. It's like I've heard it somewhere before, but I want to know where did you get it?
Well, I'll tell you, it's a funny story. So when I was creating my LLC, I did it as a means to end. Like this was like back before people were making their own films and stuff. So this was like 2005-ish, and SAG required that you have an LLC. It's not true anymore. But and so I was like, here I am being like, okay, let's do that. And I'm so glad I did. And my ex at the time, or rather my boyfriend at the time, my ex now, he's like, just call it like, JB Productions or something like that. And I was like, I don't know, like if I'm going to keep it, right? Like I want it to be kind of cool. And I was watching David Letterman and how he has like worldwide pants productions or something like that. Like, and I was like,
robot or something.
Yeah. I was like, there's always those like fun production company names, that like, you want to know the story behind, like they're fun, but you don't get it and you're not supposed to get it. It's not for you. And I was like, there's gotta be like a inside joke that would mean something to me. And I was like, there is an inside joke with my family. So my grandmother used to answer the phone to deter telemarketers. This was before she had like call waiting or what do they call it? Caller ID. She would just answer the phone with like random company names. Also, she didn't want to let people know that she was living alone. Right. Yeah. So if she'd answer the phone and be like, Bob's Hardware, it sounded like a lady answering the phone for a company store, right? This became like a family joke that every time she called us or she answered the phone, it would be some random business, and then my grandmother's also Irish, and so they loved calling her Kelly for some reason. Her name's Elizabeth. She was Kelly all the time. Yes. And so Kelly's Pool Hall was one of these like fake business names. Kelly's Pool Hall.
Okay.
Now, years later, after her death, I don't know how this originated. I think it was a meme online. There was Mel Gibson in Lethal Weapon?
Yes.
There's a clip of him. If you Google this, you will find it. Answering the phone, Kelly's Pool Hall. And I sent this to my family and was like, her name was Mama. We called her Mama. We were like, did Mama steal this from Lethal Weapon? What a weird
Coincidence. Yeah.
I think it's coincidence. We're like, this whole time we tell this cute story about my Irish grandmother being like, Kelly's pool hall. She stole it from Lethal Weapon. Maybe we don't know the origination of the story, which is part of the fun.
Yeah.
So it could be a total ripoff from Mel Gibson, or it could just be,
random.
like, yes. But either way, the funniest thing about it is that I constantly get emails addressed to Kelly, and I'm like, this means that you think I own a pool hall production company.
Yes.
You see, like, I produce billiards.
Yes.
Like, no, guys, it's Kelly's Pool Hall Productions.
Right.
Like, and moreover, if you look at my website, if you look at my Instagram, my name is right next to it.
Yes.
Like, do not call me Kelly.
Yeah.
So anyone that calls me Kelly in an email immediately gets deleted. I'm like, you don't know how to read, therefore I don't want to work with you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I want to thank you, first of all, because you have solved that for me, because ever since I saw that, I couldn't figure out why that was triggering me.
Wait, does it sound familiar?
Yes.
Is it from Lethal Weapon?
Yes.
You remember this moment? Okay.
Yes,
So then,
it's from Lethal Weapon. And that was what was triggering about it. But also, my family would do the same thing.
No way.
Only we would say Joe's Pool Hall instead of Kelly's.
That's really crazy, Jeannie. Oh my gosh.
And we would always say, Joe's not in. How can I help you? We're like, Joe, where's Joe? I need to talk to Joe. And it would just be like a random name because, that was just a thing. We would answer. That was back in the day. We would answer the phone. Like my mother would do it. My grandmother would do it. I would do it.
That's
my nephew still does it.
I'm like, was this like a cultural phenomenon, or did we both just have weird families?
Well, I think it could be both.
I was going to say it could be both.
Because, I am Irish, Scottish, all that wonderful junk too. So we were Dutch, Dutch Irish, all that kind of stuff. Or Black Dutch, I think it's what it calls it, because I was from the Dutch, but it was like we had black hair instead, That's why
terrible.
They called them that, is because the different colored hair.
Yeah.
And so it could be a cultural thing, or it could just be weird from weird people. So
you're the only person I've ever met, and even though we're not even fully meeting here, that's like ever related to that story in any way.
Interesting.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's wild.
I'm so glad. Yeah, because I was like, I finally got somebody that, and Kelly's Pool Hall, because the first time I saw it, I'm like, that is just so familiar. Why is that so familiar? And you said Lethal Weapon, and all of a sudden I'm like, I could picture Mel Gibson in that scene.
That is so funny.
I hate that she might have stolen it from Lethal Weapon. I was like, that's far less cute, and it's also maybe a lot. I'm not even sure legally okay to appropriate that.
No.
But it's
not trademarked. You're not fine.
It's funnier now to all of us in the family, because we also found out that she was like, I don't want to say a consummate liar, but she told us her whole life that she was 2 years younger than she actually was.
Oh, wow.
And it's such a strange thing, because 2 years, like if you're going to shave time off your life, what do you get by changing your age by 2 years?
Yeah.
And we only found out when she was in the hospital, and the nurse or the doctor came in and said, just validating your birth. And my grandmother said, I think we're saying 1914. And we were like, what do you mean we think we're saying? Like, how does one describe their birth year that way? And she was like, well, I loved it. Like, we were like, my dad's like, I got to do some research. Something's weird here. And then he went to the family Bible and found that she was actually born in 1912. And he was like, what happened? At what point in your life just shaved 2 years off? So if she appropriated something from Lethal Weapon and called it her own, it would be right in line with her personality. I think.
Yeah, I think we need to check, because we may have same family members.
No!
My aunt actually made herself 1 year younger.
No.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, Jeannie, you've told me that story before.
I had to have an argument with her, and we had to go to my grandmother, her mother, for her to tell and prove to my aunt that, no, you were born in 1949, not 1950. And it's like, why would you just choose 1 year difference?
I know. At least shave off 5. My God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh,
But
that's so
it's
funny.
just so weird. I mean, family. What can you
Well,
do?
and I'm going to throw this out there too. There's a little bit of commonality with Poe. When he went into the army, he lied about his name. He said he was
Yes.
Edgar
Mhm.
Perry, and he lied about his
Right
age.
I was
there.
gonna say, yeah.
And when he and Virginia got married, I think they lied about her age too, that she was a little bit older. So, yeah.
I think with Poe, he actually lied. He said what, 4 years difference? Because he said
I
he was
think
21 or and he was
yes.
only 18
Yeah, I
or
think
something
you're
like
right.
that. So at
Yeah,
least he went 4 years.
yeah.
So makes more than 2 and 1.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, that
So
is so
anyway, but
weird
thank you
and
for
crazy.
sharing that story,
No, that's
Jeanette.
an
It just made
amazing coincidence. I'm so glad you
it
brought
is.
that up.
It is
Yeah.
so
Oh my
cool.
gosh.
Yeah, and thank you for joining us
I
on
love
our
it.
discussions. And we're glad to,
Yes.
even though we're on Zoom, we're glad to met you and we'll
Likewise.
welcome you
Yeah.
to the Poe community.
Thank you so
Yes.
much. I'm so
Absolutely.
glad. Thank you, Carmen, because I was so terrible. As I said in my email, I was so terrible. I collected all this information in everyone's emails and stuff, and did a terrible
Yeah.
job following up. So thank you for
You're
staying on
welcome.
it.
Well,
And
and thank you, because like I had met a ton of people this past year at the Poe Fest. I always meet a lot, but this year seemed to be a just, use Jeannie's word that she used earlier, plethora of Poe people.
Yep.
And it was just like we've been scheduling everybody out, and so it's just, and we try to stay a couple months ahead of time.
yeah.
And so I was so excited that we could get you in here this month. So
Same. Yeah. Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Well, I'll send you, I don't know if you have any listeners in the New York City area, but I'll send you information for our screening that's happening
Oh yeah,
next month.
we'll be happy to share it out. Yes.
Yes,
Cool.
And
actually,
Yeah.
I
Thank you.
have one of my very good friends moved back to the Bronx. She was living in Brooklyn. They moved to Oregon. They just moved back to New York and they live in the Bronx now. And she is
okay,
actually an actress also.
Oh,
She's in the
nice.
cool.
And so she's been following our podcast on YouTube. So I even told her about you and your production company. I said, "Oh, she's right there in New York." She goes, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, go check out her
Mhm.
stuff."
Heck
So
yeah. I always love meeting other artists.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
We
sure. That'd be great.
yeah,
Cool.
we also have a good friend that is he's a poet, he's an author, and his name is A. Rubin, and he does great work. And he was actually at the Poe Fest last year as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to meet
and he's in Long
any and all
Island.
of them.
So
Yeah, you're right, Jeannie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Very
So-
cool. Yeah, I'll be sure to send you that. I don't have the screening time quite yet. We just have the date.
Okay.
But I'll send you all that info when I do have it. And I will send you the whole
Yeah.
film so
That
that you
sounds
can
great.
actually watch it.
All right.
I
Well,
can't
thank
wait.
you. Yeah. Do what, Jeannie?
I said, "I can't wait."
I know. I can't either. I'm excited to see it.
Aw, you're both very sweet, and I appreciate you for inviting me on here and having this
Yeah.
wonderful conversation with me and just giving artists and other Poe fans and nerds and curious people
Exactly.
to express themselves. It's really great what you're doing.
Well, thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. I guess, Jeannie, on that note,
We are Poe
out.